What's good with the YouTube? It's your boy Rojo, Convict's Perspective, man. Today's Friday. Hope y'all are gearing up for the weekend, man. Have that R&R after the week. Today's topic, man, it's a little bit on the disturbing side. It's not gross or nothing like that, man, but it's about Salinas, man, and the problem with the gang violence, and especially with the youth out there. Monterey County has the highest youth murder rate in California, and it's by a considerable amount, and most of that being in Salinas. So real quick, we'll knock out this article and chop it up a little bit about the crazy stuff we hear. All right. So this is from Vice.com. The title is "Welcome to the Youth Murder Capital of California." Monterey County has California's highest homicide rate among 10 to 24-year-olds, and most of these murders occur in the troubled city of Salinas. Cesar Hernandez Ortiz wore a green button-up shirt and black pants. His eyes were closed and his arms were folded below his chest. On a nearby wall, an effigy of Jesus Christ looked down upon his coffin. On Mother's Day of this year, the 22-year-old had been standing outside a Salinas, California apartment building when a man approached and shot Ortiz multiple times in the torso and then fled. Ortiz died before he even reached the hospital. Debbie Aguilar prayed as she knelt beside Ortiz's coffin. She hadn't known him, but she is familiar with what it feels like to lose a loved one to gun violence. Her 18-year-old son laid in a coffin here in Alta Vista mortuary after he was shot and killed in 2002. It's the worst thing in the world, says Aguilar, who now runs a nonprofit for women who've lost men to gang violence in Salinas. You have to walk away. You think, take me or else I'm going to jump in the hole with them. Ortiz's death is one of 16 homicides being investigated by the Salinas Police Department this year. 12 of the victims have been 24 years old or younger. Last year, Salinas endured its highest number of gun homicides in history, with 103 shooting victims, 31 of whom were killed, and almost half of them were 24 years or younger. They're relatively small numbers when compared to metropolitan areas like Chicago or Los Angeles with millions of people, but huge numbers for a city of just 157,000. The Violence Policy Center has ranked Monterey County, Salinas is the county seat, the youth homicide capital of California for 4 out of the last 5 years. The VPC defines youth as anyone between the ages of 10 and 24. Using data provided from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the FBI, and the California Department of Public Health. The county has also taken the top spot in annual gang-related youth homicides every year since 2011, when the report was first published. There's no problem that Salinas' gang problem is on the high end compared to most other cities in California, said Salinas Police Chief Kelly McMillan, who told a local media that his department believes there is an unlimited supply of firearms circulating in the city. Last year, Salinas had a total gun homicide rate of 19.7 shooting deaths per 100,000 people, more than 7 times higher than the national rate. And it's only a fraction under the rate of Oakland, which, according to the FBI statistics, is ranked at the 3rd most violent big city in America. These kids are growing up in a battleground area, Aguilar said of Salinas. They're going to their friends' funerals, then the next generation is going to their funerals. And the murderers aren't being brought to justice. Salinas' homicide solve rate of 24% is less than half that of California as a whole, and well below the national average of 64.5%. As in other cities, Salinas residents in neighborhoods most affected by gang violence are reluctant to cooperate with murder investigations due to fear of gang retaliation. Teresa Hernandez's 14-year-old son Alonzo was shot and killed while walking home from school in 2010. A few years later, a woman approached Hernandez at a grocery store and said she knew who pulled the trigger, but had been too afraid to contact police, fearing the gangs would attack her family. I can understand in a way, Hernandez says now. They all grew up in the same circle, but your fear holds you back, and nothing ever gets better. Her son's murder remains unsolved. Even if they did trust the police department, they feel there's no way the police can guarantee them anonymity. You guys know what I'm saying, says Jose Arreola, director of the Community Alliance for Safety and Peace, an anti-youth violence initiative in Salinas. He said the fear is legitimate because there's There's clearly a willingness on the part of those actors to take someone's life if they betray them. In April, 17-year-old Felipe Rocha Sandoval was shot multiple times point blank in front of his apartment. People connected to his family, along with Salinas Mayor Joe Gunter, a former cop, all said they believe Sandoval was targeted because he'd witnessed the killing of a 16-year-old 2 days earlier. The Salinas Police Department solicits tips through anonymous hotlines and via text in an effort to protect and reassure witnesses, whether they fear being outed as snitches or are wary of being asked questions about their immigration status as undocumented workers from Mexico who work in the Salinas Valley, out in the fields. Additionally, police activists and residents all say that families with ties to Mexico have long been wary of the Salinas authorities due to Mexico's notoriously corrupt cops. 3/4 of Salinas residents are Hispanic, but only 1/3 of its officers are. The disparity was brought to the force in 2014 when Salinas police shot and killed 4 Hispanic men in separate encounters. 2 of the men were allegedly threatening cops and civilians with garden shears and knives. One drew a fake gun on police officers as he held up a restaurant, and another charged a cop with his fingers held out in the shape of a pistol. All of them had blood alcohol levels that were more than double the legal limit, or had methamphetamines or other drugs in their systems. The mother of one of the victims said her son was schizophrenic, but police says there was no evidence of that. The Monterey County District Attorney cleared the officers of wrongdoing, but protests led McMillan to request a review from the U.S. Department of Justice. In a report released this past March, the DOJ found that Salinas officers weren't sufficiently trained to handle people with mental health issues or to de-escalate encounters. The report also questioned the police department's ability to hold officers accountable and described its relationship with the community as significantly frayed. McMillan acknowledged the last piece of criticism in a written response to the DOJ report, but he and Gunter denied the first major assertion, pointing to crisis intervention training that cops receive from the city's public health department. McMillan also said that his department has long struggled with what he called a crisis of understaffing. Without more officers, he said, the force can't afford to have cops focus on outreach or forge personal connections with the neighborhoods they patrol. Our officers have little to no time to spend on pausing to talk with residents, go to community meetings, and doing what it takes to build deeper, more trusting relationships within the community. We agree and have long believed such relationships are critically important. Salinas, like the country as a whole, has fewer police today than it did in years past. The city currently has 137 sworn officers, 50 fewer than in 2008. Since the recession, our department has been so decimated that we literally could not bring what we know will work to scale, McMillan told Vice News, referring to initiatives like the Gang Suppression Unit, which the department had to eliminate last year. We're so reactive right now, we don't have the personnel to do comprehensive gang investigations or to embed in the community. During a ride along with Officer Jackie Bone on a sunny Wednesday in March, a total of 12 officers were on patrol, including 2 had been called in on their day off. A home burglary call was made at 7:30 that morning, but an officer wasn't able to get to the house until 8:44 a.m. Then if you shoot him, you're going to go to jail. Excuse me. That burglary happened at that house might have been the worst thing that's ever happened to the residents. But things have to be put in perspective. In other words, if no one has been stabbed, shot, or assaulted, she said, it's going to take a while before police show up to a crime scene. In a room at the Hebron Heights After School Center, Oscar Nunez, 14, and Gabriel Diaz, 15, paused a game of FIFA 2016 to talk about hiding in bathrooms while the building was on lockdown because of nearby shootings. They said they had been taught to cut ties with friends becoming active in gangs. The average age of initiates in Salinas is about 13. Nunez's 24-year-old brother is currently in prison for crimes he committed while with the Norteños gang. What do they think needs to happen to stop the gang and gun violence affecting youth? Maybe stop selling guns to kids, Nunez said. The cops need to patrol more, said Diaz, who added he thought the police were doing a good job. Nunez wouldn't say what he thought of the police. California cities with large amounts of gang activity are laboring to retain officers lured elsewhere with offers of higher pay or less potential exposure to violence. The Salinas Police Department hired 19 officers with a total of 11 years of experience last year, but it also lost 16 officers with a total of nearly 130 years of experience. You have a brain drain, an experience drain, and you just run them into the ground and they can't take it anymore, McNutt said. Last year, after 10 years in service, the Monterey County Gang Task Force, which collaborated with the FBI on a number of successful stings against both Sereno and Norteño gang operations, was dismantled, largely because Salinas needed to pull all of its cops to put them on more regular beats. But there are a few bright spots, city officials said. Matt Presley, Salinas' budget and finance director, noted that more money was allocated for potential youth-oriented anti-gang programs in the 2015 and 16 budget, and more kids may be avoiding gangs. Looking at the last couple of years, the data says that the age of people involved in gangs has changed. Gunter, the city's mayor, said, the majority of ages of shooters have gone up, so we believe we're potentially getting to some of the young people. Salinas saw record numbers of homicides and gun homicides last year, but the number of people under the age of 25 killed by guns dropped by more than a third compared to 2012 and 2013. When the city voted for a 1-cent sales tax hike in 2014, it promised to bring an estimated $300 million over the next 15 years to help fund everything from public works projects to after-school programs. But Juan Gomez, co-founder of local Hispanic youth advocacy group Milpa, points out that more than 50% of that money is slated for the police force, which plans to put more cops in Salinas schools. He says more community initiatives and social services are really what are needed to protect the city's youth. If there's something crazy going on, of course, call the cops because folks need to be safe. But if a kid is not safe at school, they don't need to go to a police officer, they need to go to a counselor. On a recent Saturday, Aguilera gathered with a group of other women and children in Gloucester Park, which itself has seen several shootings and homicides. The woman carried framed photos of family members they lost to gun violence, some as young as 14. Witnesses need to come forward. Mothers need to talk to their children. What are you doing? What are you hanging out with? People need to step in. This is the only way these problems will be solved. Man, that's crazy. So everybody knows Salinas is kind of, basically the unnamed headquarters in Northern California as far as the Northern group is concerned. There's also some gentlemen from down south that have, established themselves in that area as well. But the thing about Salinas, man, is there's always been so many well-educated OGs that have gotten out of prison and gone to Salinas, NF members, NR members, Norteños with multiple years. And it's generational, man. Things have been happening in Salinas for decades, and they're always extremely well schooled. And they go out there and they recruit strongly, and they teach and they school. Salinas isn't a common town as far as gang banging goes. They're really ahead of the time. As far as the major influence of the big groups and the establishment, activities that come along with that. Salinas it's in a league by itself. What's disturbing about this in particular is the ages. 10, 14, you know what I mean? People that age, 10 years old, you should be playing sports and, having your first crushes on girls and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be dodging bullets. 14, that's about when a lot of people start getting involved with the hood. Some of these towns like Salinas, man, it's even younger, bro. But part of being a G, and we've talked about this before, is letting kids be kids and teaching them the right way. You don't want nieces and nephews and sons and little brothers dodging bullets, man. You don't want them to follow in your footsteps unless something's wrong with you. You choose your path, and that's fine. Do you to the fullest. But don't, people are going to gravitate where they're going to gravitate naturally. Some people are going to go to sports. Some people are going to go to careers. You know, some people are going to do what they're going to do, and some people, unfortunately, are going to take the gangster route. Let that develop naturally, man. You know, being an OG, man, isn't about putting all those things into the next generation's thing, man. Use your experience as a lesson to guide people along the right path, especially the people you care about. Salinas is a smaller town. They got a lot of problems, man, but there's also a lot of people that could be helping to reduce that just by educating the little homies in the hood. I don't know. People that old shouldn't be dying due to gang violence, straight up. So do your part, man. You know, all you OGs out there, all you people that have been in the pen, don't let your little brother fall in the footsteps. Don't let the homies from the hood fall in the footsteps. Encourage them to jump in some football, some soccer, some baseball. You know what I mean? Hang out with chicks. You know what I mean? Smoking weed, drinking, smoking KJ and shit. If that's your path, hey, you chose yours. Don't encourage somebody else to choose that path, because at the end of the day, it's not going to lead nowhere. That's what we say on this show all the time. That lifestyle comes with only a few destinations, and none of them are good. It's your boy Rojo, Convict's Perspective. Just a little short one, man. Enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend. Watch out for your people.